Those were the days, my dear, they thought they never end.
Soon will be over.
All right. Ready to start when you are?
Anytime.
Let's see. I'm not quite booted up yet, but I can remember most of the questions. So first one is very basic. So where and when were you born?
Where was I born? I was born in Chicago, at Lion Inn Hospital, which is the University of Chicago Hospital, on October 14th, 1918. That's a little over 100 years ago.
What was growing up in Chicago like then?
Well, Chicago was a fast-growing city at the time, and we were on the northwest side, and they were still just building new houses and apartments there. I think growing up in Chicago was very nice. It has some wonderful facilities, like Oak Street Beach, and, which is due east of where we lived.
Really cool. You remember
In fact, we could hitch rides and go to the beach.
So is it safe to just like hitchhike to the beach, or?
Oh, it's a nice beach. It was in fact, the beach is still famous today because it's near the Drake Hotel, which is one of the nice hotels in Chicago, or was. I don't know if it still is. And we used to go there and spend the afternoons there, and then hitch a ride back. Sometimes we'd hang on a vehicle in a truck, and sometimes we'd get a ride.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you have like one group of friends who you would go down with most of the time, or
What?
organized parties?
Parties?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we had parties. I don't remember who organized them. Probably the girls in our class organized them. And they were very nice. I have very nice remembrances of them, memories of them. They were the first time that I kissed a girl. And we used to play games like spin the bottle.
We still play that at parties now, so the game hasn't died yet.
And now, growing up in Chicago, I went to Lafayette School, and I don't know, for some reason, I was kind of a star there. I was I used to ring the bell every day. I'd have a bell, and I'd walk around the school ringing the bell.
For school to start, or for school to start?
Like you could not see. This
Did what?
For school to start? Like, what was the bell for? Was it for
Just to
school
tell
starting?
students to go to class.
I was so.
There had a lot of power.
That
in
they
the
were
bell.
the classes were starting, and I was a traffic guide. I had a white belt, and now we have professionals. But before we had professional people on guiding traffic, the students did it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so I was one of them, and I got this belt, which I tried to get my mother to keep white.
Was she successful?
No, no, oh, somewhat. And then I was at almost all of the uh, meetings, when we had assemblies, I was somehow almost always on the program.
Somehow.
Somehow.
So,
And I had my first failure then, because I was asked to prepare the night before Christmas, and I didn't do an adequate job. So I started to recite, and then I forgot what was coming. And the teachers just said, "No, forget it. You're not doing this." Well, that was one of my first failures socially.
but you can still talk about it very good-naturedly.
And now the school itself, well, we were very happy with it. But something, when we finished 8th grade, we were supposed to go to a high school called Tuley, T-U-L-E-Y, named after, oh gee, I forgot who Tuley was.
You can Google them
Anyway.
afterwards.
Yeah, I have to look it up. And, but Tuley didn't have room for us. So we were sent to a junior high, which we didn't like because we felt very competitive with them. And all of a sudden we were part of it.
In the rivals.
And, well, it only lasted a term or two, but we gave our teacher a very hard time. My class at Lafayette never gave any teacher a hard time. It was unheard of. But as soon as we got to the junior high school, my God, they were misbehaving all the time. One of the teachers couldn't take it anymore, and she left. They put in a teacher who was really tough. She wouldn't take any crap from anybody. And, you got out of line, and she put you to the front of the class and said, "Start writing on this blackboard." And you wrote and wrote and wrote for hours if necessary. And she got the control of the class. Just by being firm, that's pretty good. I still remember how she looks, but I can't remember her name. So I was in that, it was 9th grade equivalent. And then in 10th grade, I was in Tuley High School.
So they ended up getting a place. They ended up having room eventually.
Well, Howard went to Tuley.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And, yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Dorothy did too. But Howard was kind of a star at Tuley.
You mean Lester?
And I inherited some of his reputation.
You meant Lester, not Howard. Lester's
Not-
older brother.
Not, no, you didn't say Howard.
Yes, look at it.
Lester.
And I don't think Lulu would let
No, I know you
anybody
did.
else
To jump forward a bit, didn't you graduate officer school before?
Not explain it.
Oh,
Lester
that's
did?
later on, of course.
But, I mean,
After high school, I went to a public junior college called Wright Junior College, W-R-I-G-H-T, probably named after the inventor of the airplane.
The Wright brothers.
And Wright brothers, very likely, I'm not sure. And that was a pretty good experience. I didn't have to work very hard to get good grades.
if you look at the
And then I followed
get that same effect.
Lester's career. And when I finished that, I went to law school. And the law school was independent at the time, but now is part of Illinois Technical Institute.
Oh, okay.
And let's see now.
What influenced?
Now, oh yeah.
What influenced your decision to go to law school?
Discovered that I can do a little.
I
picture
think
of
it was
me
because
and
I
then-
expected to be Lester's partner. So
Oh,
he
okay.
became a lawyer and I decided to become a lawyer.
I was waiting for the concert.
And I worked with him. When I finished law school, I worked with him
This
for a
is the
while.
first one I took her. I just
Mhm.
I did the dirty work.
So you were partners, but you got the
Yeah, I did it. Not very
was the
interesting
sidekick.
things.
sidekick.
He was the sidekick of Lester.
Yeah, I'm just an office boy, and really, that was all I was.
Office boy who went to law school.
And now,
When you're taking the picture. Like, you
I
can see
finished
that
law
person.
school. Lester was working for another firm, and so I couldn't join him. And so I volunteered for the 1940 census, working in Washington.
Ooh, how was that? Was it?
Well,
There's
they needed people to, you know, to count the, to categorize the material, measure, you know, record it. And while I was there, I applied for a job that opened up for a legal assistant at the Toledo, Ohio Selective Service Board. That's the board that was in charge of drafts.
Okay.
And this was an appeals board. So they were appealing. I was, in effect, the secretary to the board. And they would listen to it and they make judgments and then I would write up the decision. And I did that for several months.
Every year? Yes, sir, you want a horse?
I think I began there in about February or March of 41.
This squirrel took our cherry tomato. We were coming back from a walk and we
Don't
saw
remember really.
it. Took our cherry tomato.
Was it fun working there, or was it?
Well, it was fun. I was
These are cookies I made for Sarah
an
to
important
take
person there
to
because
her-
everybody wanted a break on their
to her test.
Look at that.
draft.
You would think of yourself, right?
But I would
I'd
have
like to see a
any,
picture of all of us.
no preferences. And,
Yeah, I made these for Sarah and I made little paper
and I had,
flowers.
the board was a very, very interesting board.
You gotta get back on.
Clarence Benedict, the chairman of the board, was the head of the social services in Toledo. And one of my great regrets is that I never continued to communicate with him after I left the job. Because well, they were all good. In fact, I'm sorry I didn't stay in communication with all of them. And I was just, I guess, too lazy to keep them informed about what was happening to me. So I left my job, though, to return to the University of Chicago. I felt that I wanted to know more about, I decided I was going to be a corporate lawyer.
Oh,
So
okay.
Lego setup.
So you
And
didn't.
then I thought I'd better
So we all had different.
learn
pencils.
something about economics,
So
and
Anna stuck
businesses
her
and
kids in a
corporations.
tree and they were putting
So I
pencils
enrolled
down there.
in economics
So
at the
there was a
University of
guy
Chicago.
watching the kids.
Why I didn't go to the business school, I don't know.
And then there are people.
I enrolled in economics, but I found economics very,
There's a
very
kid on the roof going
interesting,
to pet a bird.
intellectually rewarding. Law school,
People are
you
all-
have cases, you
So the
you
detective
discuss
is
the
looking
cases.
for the jewel, the
Yeah.
guy is holding the jewel.
Lawyers
Police
are
officer
essentially
is trying
uneducated
to
people,
report him that it's right there.
in my opinion.
And
It's funny to think about because you have to go through so much schooling to get there, but
Well, they go to classes, but that's the same, well, yes, you learn. The case method teaches you law, and it taught me well enough so that when I prepared for the bar examinations, I just read my notes. I didn't do anything else. Others were taking special classes and all kinds of things, and
Probably says
I
a lot
just
about
relaxed and took it easy and just read my notes, and I passed the bar first time I took it.
There's Raymond playing with blocks.
a lot about
And-
your intellectual ability there. But you liked economics better.
You didn't want me to take a
Right.
picture of
Well,
it,
I found it challenging,
but you poked up.
because there was so much that I didn't understand. And so I was really learning something.
We lost our plate.
And I was really learning, I didn't know it at the time,
Yeah.
but I was really learning how to think,
Take pictures, right?
because,
Another attempt. Oh, this
uh,
is a song Raymond wrote. I have an edited
Okay,
version.
let's do it.
I'll show you it in a
unlike
This
today,
is a short cake
economics today
It's
is
got jelly and
Ooh, it reminds you of the good
cream
dessert
marshmallow
company.
mostly statistics.
and sponge cake.
Yeah, you need a lot of.
But at that time, it wasn't. It was,
Marshmallow I made.
you got to have some math,
Get
you
into
had to
my
have
tips and the tricks.
some statistics. But
So I will now go and
what
get
you
the
studied in class
piano.
had nothing to do with statistics, except when you were taking a statistics course
Got
or a math course,
video
which of
of
course I
this
did
on my
as
phone,
I was, when I was
and
in
that was the
school.
first thing I did.
So was it more theoretical, or
Really-
what was there instead of statistics? Was
Oh, I
it
did
more
our
theoretical?
entire trip in 5 minutes.
Well, yes, it was essentially logic, drawing conclusions from assumptions. You say, well, if the world was like this is the way people will behave.
This is the song Raymond.
And so I did that.
And-
I would, at that. And I didn't intend to stay for a degree,
The song Raymond wrote.
but I got interested in it. And in fact, one of my professors who died, and whose ideas I don't agree with anymore. See, they teach you well enough so that you can disagree with them.
Yes, it's always a mark of a good teacher if they can.
Yeah,
Teach
same thing with
someone.
Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman I had as my advisor on my dissertation.
Oh, how was that? I mean, I know a lot about Milton Friedman. I'm kind of a monetarist, but
Yes.
how?
yeah.
What was it like working with him?
Well, pretty good. He's an interesting guy, and
General idea.
very knowledgeable,
Good enough.
and
Raymond's song.
very
Our
rigorous.
entire trip in
Uh,
5 minutes.
he'd give you a
The
problem,
extra 53
and he'd
seconds.
expect you to
actually
reason
just
it
the
out.
I was using.
And,
I had to figure out how to cut it shorter.
Uh,
So it is actually.
he was a very good professor, no question about it. And I had the microeconomics from him. And macroeconomics I had from a couple of stars, went on to Yale and became Nobel Prize winners. I think I had about 5 of my professors were Nobel Prize winners.
Yeah, we could.
It was a great class.
We could
And the
keep
post-war, I think even today, they think of the post-war class, World War II that is, they think of that as probably the best class they've ever had, because there more stars came out of it.
Yeah.
If I were so lazy, or if I didn't get distracted by other things, if I just concentrated on economics, just learning and writing, and I could have been a star too, I'm sure.
So what did you do instead of economics then?
Well, I had different opportunities occurred. For one thing, I organized the Oakland Co-op. I I thought for a while that the co-op was a good idea, a sensible economic organization. But I learned that co-ops cannot be successful because they're democratic. And no business is successful if it's democratic. You have to have somebody with a firm hand. So I learned that. And the co-op that exists in Pittsburgh here is a second or third generation of that co-op. It's the same co-op, really. But
I think we might have skipped over a little bit here. We're in Pittsburgh now, but we left off in Chicago.
oh, Chicago. Well, among the things in Chicago is I had the opportunity to join a Jewish boys club. It wasn't Jewish. Well, it was sponsored by Jewish women, and my cousin was one of the members of the board.
Okay.
Dorothy Shapira was a member of the board, and Dorothy Tower, I should say. She was unmarried at the time. And I think that was very, very good, because the kids that I grew up with were not very disposed to accomplishing anything intellectually. We played around in various games. We played games like Church on Fire.
I don't know that one.
You don't know that game. The reason you don't know that game is because you set up a fire and then you pee on it to put it out.
How old were you at that time?
That's the kind of kids I was running around with. And really, if I had stayed running around with them, the chances are I'd never have gone to college.
In California.
Anyway, joined the Deborah Boys Club. They had a summer camp. I went to the summer camp twice. And they were, they had different groups. One of them was a drama group.
Ah.
So we
Were you in any
put on
plays?
plays and stuff like that. And had a professional from the Jewish People's Institute, which is in another part of the city, come in to organize us. And the first thing she did was teach me to speak. Because I was just mumbling like everybody else. We didn't speak English. We didn't pronounce it. We didn't enunciate clearly. And she was a stickler for enunciation. And so she had all of us with these neighborhood dialects. And she would give us exercises. Like this one, which I still play with. B and P. You have to distinguish between them. B, P, B, P, by, bo, bo, B, boo, boo, boy, boy.
Yeah, they're still
So I
doing
had
those.
D and T. D, T, D, T, da, da. I had to learn a G. Ch, Ch, G, G. I had to learn to pronounce these things, because she wouldn't let us go on the stage if we couldn't speak our parts well. And I think that was one of the most valuable experiences that I had there, because she was a professional actress, and we taught drama and acting, and we were just very lucky to have had somebody like her teaching us really that you have to try to excel. You have to speak so people will understand you. And anyway, I was a member of Deborah Boyd's Club for several years. I think roughly till I finished until I finished high school. And then my interests changed, and I was in college and college debating team. And see, again, I could never have made that team if I hadn't learned to speak English better.
It's a bit like Pygmalion,
Yeah.
you know, by Shaw.
So, and I entered an oratorical contest. I have some medals upstairs. I never won, but I got a bronze. And so speaking clearly and chairing or participating in assemblies as the student leader, that was important to me. That helped me develop, got me away from pissing on churches.
Yeah, there's certainly some kind of development. So, then to jump ahead a little bit in the future, what did you do after you graduated from University of Chicago?
Oh, that was a very interesting time.
You skipped the war.
Of course, I always went to the annual meetings of the American Economic Association, and we were all expected to attend, and I did. And they also have a kind of a job opening bazaar. Schools advertise their vacancies, and they interview you at these meetings, and so on. And I was interviewed by a couple who rejected me. Amherst Williams College. I mean, that was a job, a friend of mine had made it. He was a member of the faculty, and he wanted me to become a member of the faculty. And so he recommended me, and they gave me an examination, and I wasn't very strong in macroeconomics. If they concentrated on micro, I'd have been able to snow them, you know, but macro, I didn't really understand it yet. So I didn't get that job. And then there was one other, New York, New York University, and a member of the a young member of the faculty had almost the same background that I did, so there wasn't. They didn't hire me. And at a what's the name of the school? Westminster College? Maybe. Westminster College in Pennsylvania. The head of the department was interviewing, and he just wanted a replacement for himself for a year. So he wanted somebody.
Sabbatical.
And of course I fitted his bill because he liked Chicago economics. So he invited me to come to Westminster and near Newcastle, Pennsylvania. actually in a place called New Wilmington, New Wilmington, Pennsylvania. And I went there and I met the head of the university. I don't know whether it was the president or chancellor or what. And now I was Jewish, and of course this is a Christian college.
Ah.
And they said no drinking. So they asked me if I drank, and I said yes, I did. I said I don't drink to excess. I drink at wine at Jewish services. And they said, well, if you came here, will you guarantee us that you would not serve liquor to any of our students? Oh, I said, yes, of course, I wouldn't do that. And so a week or so later, I heard they said, okay, you're hired for the year. It was very nice. I enjoyed that period. And I started teaching around at different colleges part-time in Ohio and so on. And then the chairman of the department, whose place I took, he still lived in New Wilmington, which was a small place, and I saw him frequently. He said, how would you like to work in Western Pennsylvania at the University of Pittsburgh? I said, I don't know anything about the University of Pittsburgh. Well, he said, a friend of mine is chairman of the department there, and I'm going to tell him that you're available. And sure enough, Asher Isaacs called me and said, do you want to come up for an interview? And that's how I got to the University of Pittsburgh.
You didn't even have to organize anything. They just came and asked you.
That's just it. And that was a very good decision. No doubt, that made my teaching career. And, I taught elsewhere. I taught University of Chicago in Illinois. I was chairman of the department there for 1 year. And I left there to return to Pittsburgh when my first wife, Hilda, got cancer. And so I decided not to teach that year. So I took a leave of absence and I just never returned to it. I stayed in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. That was a mistake. Well, it wasn't really. It wasn't fatal. Because I was invited to join the faculty as acting chairman at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Beautiful little town, had a nice house there, a little swimming pool, and very nice. Life couldn't be sweeter. And then Hilda said I wanted to return to Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. So then you returned
Because our daughter was in with the crowd there, acting up. That's Janice. And she said, I don't think Janice should stay here. So I left my job there and went back to Pittsburgh. That was a mistake. You never allow your children's lives to determine your own. That's my principle. If the children want to misbehave, that's their business. And they have to face the consequences of it. And that was a real, it was a negative decision that I made. And I should never have made that decision. Because I did like my old job at the University of Pittsburgh was filled by somebody else, one of my students. Still friends. Name is Jack Oakes, and I see him once in a while. And this field is public finance, and mine is public finance. But I ended up in the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs. It's a school of public policy. Well, I don't know what other schools are like, but I just would never recommend anybody to go to school at the Graduate School of Public Public Policy, because it's not a discipline. It's just graduate work in political science. So it's a graduate school of political science. And I'm an economist, so I'm really teaching political scientists what they ought to know about economics, which is all right and fine, but it's not a challenge to an economist. As an economist, you want to be with economists.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't a good decision. And but I made the most of it. I really don't have a lot to complain about. I was treated very well by the school, by my colleagues at the school, and I could still participate in the economics department meetings and so on.
I think,
In fact, if I had done more of that, chances are I would have ended up in economics. But I didn't. I just attended about a meeting every 2 weeks or so. And,
I think I have one more question.
and they didn't consider me a member of the department.
Maybe one more question, and then probably have to stop the interview. What advice do you have for future generations?
Well, I'm not optimistic about future generations. I think I lucked out in being a member of one of the best generations. I don't see, for example, today, when the Second World War broke out, I had plans to go back to the University of Chicago, which I did. But I knew that I would be drafted and I'd go to war. So about 2 weeks after the war broke out, I enlisted. I tried to get into the Navy, and they rejected me because I'm colorblind. And
Excuse me, you cannot sing out.
I volunteered.
Okay, help yourselves.
No, I enlisted in the Army as a private. And they tested me and gave me various tests, and they assigned me to Ordnance Department at Patterson Field, Ohio. Well, my job there was routine. Airplanes would come in, and we would check to see what armament there was on the plane, what guns they had, and the numbers and so on, and then we would make a report. And I did that for about 4 or 5 months when the opportunity came to apply to officer candidate school in the Air Force, because Patterson Field was an Air Force base. So we were getting all their information. I think the most interesting thing about my application for officer school was my color blindness, because that kept me from even joining the Navy as an ensign.
Well, lassen Sie Elias Pie.
And so I had to take a physical examination, and of course they discovered that I was colorblind. Well, they said, you can't become an officer if you're colorblind. So I said, but I'm only partially colorblind. I said, I can see reds and greens and so on. They said, well, let's take a look and see. So they gave me a test of yarns, different color yarns.
Okay.
And they say, well, pick out the red one. So I was able to do that. I went this and picked that, showed them the two, and the green ones. So, yeah, I was able to do that too. And the blue and yellow, well, I could see those very well. There was no problem with those. So they said, well, your color blindness is really minimal.
Okay. Who else
Um,
doesn't have? You.
and I checked the regulations and they found
Does
that
everybody have it?
I could go to
Jesse?
school. I couldn't
I was
fly,
gonna share with
I
Brad.
don't
but
have
I
them.
could go to
Jesse, I don't know
candidate
where he
school.
is.
I don't know.
So I was admitted to officer candidate school and became a second lieutenant and gradually
Yeah, I don't think.
got to be a major. And
Maybe.
after the war, I got to be a lieutenant colonel. So I want all of you to salute when you see me.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the things that I regret is that I should have stayed in the reserve.
You regret everything.
I don't know why I didn't.
That's.
It was
That's
stupid.
enough, huh? Miriam, that's enough, not more than that.
Would you like some blueberries, honey?
Good. In Ephrata, Washington, which is about, I don't know, 100 miles west of Spokane. And I was adjutant. I had a lot of extra duties because I was also a lawyer. I was sort of a member of the courts martial. But one of the things that I was a principal administrative officer, so when the USO would send entertainers out, which would be approximately about once a month or something like that, I would welcome them to our base, get them housing, see that they got fed, and after they performed, I would invite them to the officers' club for a drink, for whatever. And at one time, we had a black group come in to entertain.
Okay.
They were very good dancers, and very, very, very good. Then, to my surprise, they were assigned to the enlisted men's quarters. Well, they were white, and especially with a woman. There were a couple of women in them, in the group, and they would go always be at our club, at the officers' club. So I invited them all to come over to the officers' club afterwards, and I bought them drinks, and we danced. We had a lot of fun. The next morning, I was in Coventry. None of these fellow officers would talk to me. My secretary, a young woman by the name of Linda, was married to a commissioned officer and a non-commissioned officer in communications. And she came in and told me, and she started to cry. She said that her husband won't let her work for me anymore.
Oh, no.
So I didn't know how it was going to turn out because didn't know how long it would last. And but I just kept doing my work as usual. And a few days later, a flying officer comes in, a captain, and to visit with me. Just came in, pay respects. We chatted about his experiences in the war and so on. And that ended. A couple of days later, he comes back and to my office, and he says, you know, I'm organizing a bomb group. It's a new, a bomb squadron. It's a new bomb group that's just been established, and I'm looking for somebody who would be my adjutant. How'd you like to be the adjutant of a bomb squadron? That's the basis of my career in the Army, because I became his adjutant, and I had my legal background. I was on courts all the time, and I gradually got promoted to major, which was fantastic. I probably would become a major if I'd gone somewhere else. I don't know, haven't any idea. But it was I consider it to be a real accomplishment. And after the war, I was promoted to lieutenant colonel on the basis of a course that I was taking. And I should have stayed in. All I had to spend is 50 hours a month, no, a year, 50 hours a year in military exercises, and I would stay in the reserve. But I was traveling around so much, I just let it go.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like that story turned out very well when you got your group upset with you for bringing the
And this
African-American
officer,
entertainers.
this captain who hired me because of that incident. He wanted somebody who would be willing to stand up to other people. He didn't want some milquetoast. And and he was from Georgia, of all things.
Didn't he go down over Germany?
Yes. No, he went down, but not over Germany. He went down because his plane got into trouble. I don't know, returning from a mission, maybe.
Pass me that plate, please.
Probably returning from a mission. And he didn't get out. He went down with the plane. Some of his crew did get out.
He stayed with the plane probably until everybody got out, and by then it was too late.
I really don't know,
Or he might have been.
but that's the
shot
kind of a
himself.
guy he was. He would do that. He would make sure everybody else got out before he would get out. I don't know why he didn't get out of the airplane.
Colonel Weibel. Weibel was his last name.
Yeah.
So how did you meet Hilda in England during the war?
How did I meet?
Hilda. Howard's mom.
Wilma?
No,
Hilda.
Oh, how did
during
I
the
meet
war.
her?
Yeah, during the war.
Well, a friend, and we had a day off, we had a couple of days off, I guess, and we went to London, and he invited me to accompany him. He was meeting a girl in a nightclub. And I said, sure, I'd be glad to do it. So I went with him, and he was meeting Hilda's sister, Dot. Okay? And Wilma was with her.
Dot, Hilda.
Yeah. And that's how I met her. She was working at the time at the, Downing Street, where they had a secret headquarters, about 100 feet underground, I
It's
guess.
now a museum.
Yeah, we went there.
Yeah? And I took her home. I got a taxi and took her to Downing Street. And then I said if I see her again, and she said yes, and I called her a couple of days later, and that's how that romance started.
Good use of break time over.
Did she have a book under her arm, or did I make that up? Did she have a book with her?
A book?
Did she have a
No,
book
she
with her?
did. And I even know the name of it because I read
What
it.
was the book?
It was Wasserman's book. Which one was it?
Oh, he says it.
I have it upstairs.
Did you read it after she read it?
Oh, yes, I read it after the war. And she was my WAC, the woman's auxiliary
Right.
person. Father's brothers came first, two older brothers, and brought my father and his younger brother, Sam, to this country.
Mhm. They went back and got them or
Uh,
sent money?
The money, I don't know where the money came from. And
Would that have been around 1900 or when did they come
no,
over?
it was
Earlier?
earlier than that, I think. It
1890?
was about 90s,
Big wave.
1890.
Had they been, do you know, did you ever hear stories, were they having trouble where they lived in Europe? And pogroms or problems or?
No, I don't remember any pogroms, but I did know about where they lived. My father's father was a rabbi. Of course, he was quite young at that time, and he came to this country too. And he had one of those characteristics of men, of Richmond men. That is to say, toward the end of his life, he decided that he wanted to die in Israel. So he went to Israel, left his wife here.
And didn't his father do that even before him? His father
No.
did that too, didn't he?
I don't think so. I don't know that.
So was that Aaron?
That was Aaron.
And one thing I just have to say, after 1972, up to today, Ray doesn't remember a thing, okay? It's not on his experience. He doesn't,
Was the
he
book-
hasn't existed since 1972.
Was the book that
2018,
that Hilda
okay?
had under her arm, was it called The World's Illusion by Wasserman?
Well,
No.
I need something to put.
Jolly, jolly fourpence. I got fourpence to last me all my life. I got fourpence to spend and fourpence to lend and fourpence to send home to my wife. Poor wife, no cares have I to grieve me. No pretty little girls to deceive me. As happy as a lark, believe me. As
dance to accompany
Yeah, I
that.
like that dance.